From Born to Run to the return of Barry Allen and Flash's rebirth, here's a list of the best Flash storylines which were turned from comics into TV shows. Starting with the most iconic one, Flashpoint. Remember the 2011 comic book crossover event that shook the DC universe to its core? It all started when Barry Allen, aka The Flash, wakes up in a world that's completely different from the one he knows. He soon discovers that he's responsible for the changes in the timeline, having gone back in time to prevent his mother's murder. Now, here comes the crazy part. This storyline has also been shown in the third season of the CW show, with its unique twist, of course. In the TV show, Barry does travel back in time to prevent his mother's death, but when he returns to the present, he finds out that everything has changed. His powers are different, he's not married to Iris, and Wally West is the Flash. But the biggest shocker is that his actions have caused a ripple effect that's led to a new timeline where the world is in chaos. So in the third season, we see him grappling with the consequences of his actions and trying to set things right. And he must team up with his friends to restore the timeline, even if it means making sacrifices along the way. In all seriousness, you should check it out. Which reminds me, all Scarlet Speedster fans should get ready for this next one, Born to Run. The story follows the origin of Wally West, the third person to hold the mantle of the Flash. We see how he goes from being Kid Flash to taking on the role of the Flash, and that too after his mentor, Barry Allen, sacrifices himself during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. The series is famous for its emotional storytelling and beautiful artwork, and it's considered one of the greatest Flash stories of all time.
I've been around long enough to know you're about to tell me I'm screwed. But I'm telling you, I'm innocent.
Jocko, the bartender.
But what makes it so relevant today? Well, it's a story about legacy and the passing of the torch. A young hero who tries to live up to the legacy of his predecessor, and it's a theme that resonates across generations. And it's been referenced in various ways, both in comics and on screen. For example, in the CW show, we see Wally West take on the mantle of the Flash after Barry Allen goes missing in the Speed Force. This storyline is a clear reference to Born to Run and shows how influential the story still is today. Plus, Born to Run is just a fun and exciting read. You get to see Wally West's journey from a sidekick to a hero in his own right, and it's filled with plenty of action and humor. So, whether you're a die-hard Flash fan or just someone who loves a good superhero story, this one is worth checking out. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
I just don't want to see someone go to prison for a murder they might not have committed.
Oh, and speaking of restoring legacies, let's move on to the return of Barry Allen. As one of DC's most well-known legacy heroes, Wally West has always had a lot to prove, and this storyline helped to show that he was a good choice to take over the Scarlet Speedster title. At first, he was thrilled to have his mentor and friend back, but things quickly started to unravel. This Barry is not the man he used to be, and as the story progresses, we start to see that something much more sinister is at play. Wally and the readers find out that this Barry is Professor Zoom, also known as the Reverse Flash, who's gone to great lengths to look like Barry Allen. Wally asks other speedster friends for help to get rid of Reverse Flash, but in the end, has to step up and beat him on his own. It might seem obvious for him to deal with his past in such a direct way, but superhero comics thrive on making these kinds of conflicts real. But where has this story tied in down the line? Well, it has had a lasting impact on the Flash mythos. It introduced a new villain, the Reverse Flash, who's become one of the Flash's most iconic enemies. The story also had a huge impact on the character, as he was forced to confront the idea that he could never truly replace Barry Allen. With this story, writer Mark Waid and artist Greg LaRocque finished the handoff from Barry to Wally for good. Although, what knocked me right out of my seat was Flash Rebirth. I think the title pretty much gives away most of the storyline, but hey, the only thing that matters is that it lived up to the hype. So yeah, this story takes place after Barry Allen's return from the dead, but it's anything but sunshine and rainbows after that. There are dark forces at work that threaten to tear apart the entire Speed Force. Pretty crazy, right? Long story short, it looks at what made Barry Allen a hero in the first place and tells his origin story from a different point of view.
Look, assuming we can find our way into the negative Speed Force, let us handle this. We will make sure Thawne gets back to Iron Heights. Dad, we promise.
It's also got something to do with the death of his mother and changes how Flash sees Reverse Flash, who gets a lot more depth. It's a must-read part of the Flash's journey because it explains everything about what makes him tick, and it'll make you laugh, cry, and feel every other emotion that you didn't even think would be possible to feel while watching a show. But why is it so relevant today?
Already decided you're giving up on him.
No, we're just looking at the facts, man.
So am I. And 2 exact fire signatures makes me think Birch is not our guy.
Well, for one, it brought back one of the most beloved characters in the DC universe. It also introduced new concepts and ideas that have become integral to the Flash's character. For example, the story explores the idea of the Speed Force as a living entity, which has been expanded upon in subsequent Flash stories. But that's not all. The CW's The Flash takes many elements from the comic book story, including Barry's return and the concept of the Speed Force.
Kind of the opposite. I guess you saw the first article for our new profile section.
You mean yours?
Taylor, I know how this looks, and
And last but not the least, let's talk about the Flashpoint Paradox. Barry Allen wakes up in a world that's completely different from the one he knows. His mother is alive, his powers are gone, and the Justice League doesn't exist. As he tries to figure out what's going on, he discovers that he's inadvertently created an alternate timeline, one where everything he knows and loves has been twisted and corrupted. And to make matters worse, the Reverse Flash is behind it all. Without giving too much away, it's a story about the consequences of our actions and the lengths we'll go to set things right. It's a story that will challenge your assumptions about the Flash and the DC universe as a whole. But why is it so relevant today? Well, for starters, it introduced the concept of the multiverse into the DC universe. This idea has been explored in various other stories and adaptations, but it's become an integral part of the DC mythos. The TV adaptation takes many of the same concepts and ideas from the comic book story, and it adds twists and turns to keep things fresh. It's a great example of how a good story can inspire new and exciting adaptations. But as with any parallel universe or alternate timeline story, there will be a lot of character changes that will upset some fans.
Well, hey, I don't mean to be rude or whatever, but why am I here?
Tina.
Just remember that it's a parallel universe or alternate timeline, and the character is no longer the same as you remember. Flash comes out of this story looking great, but understandably, fans of Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and others might be disappointed. So guys, these were all the best Flash storylines that were turned from comics into TV shows.